Light heavyweight champion Jiri Prochazka was the division boogeyman long before he won the belt, knocking out Dominic Reyes with a spinning elbow from the Czech samurai's pace, intensity, and unorthodox striking are side effects of his approach to training his mind for martial arts, and his latest session required sensory deprivation and fasting for 3 days. Let's look at this eerie training regimen and why Jiri goes through it. First of all, what is darkroom training? In his latest expedition outside the boundaries of conventional MMA training, the Czech samurai locked himself in a room for almost 3 days. Now, most of us who've had to quarantine solo for COVID-19 know how maddening complete isolation can be on its own, but that wasn't intense enough for the world champion. The room was barely as tall as Prochazka himself, with a mattress taking up a third of the floor space and a chair in a corner. The walls, unpainted plywood. Jiri also wanted the room to be so dark for the entirety of his stay that he couldn't tell what time of day it was, preventing him from being able to calculate the end of his isolation. The entire point of such a non-physical training exercise was to condition Jiri's mind and his body, strengthening the relationship between the two. To this end, he also fasted for the entire 3 days. Going without food and surviving only on water makes the zero distraction situation even more daunting. Coming up, how does it train Jiri's mind? It's a given that all fighters that make it to the highest level of MMA, the UFC, are going to be in peak physical condition. What separates the fighters from the champions, however, is their mental fortitude. Jiri has long practiced and advocated meditation. He believes fighting is an intensely intimate experience for both fighters in the ring. The ability to breathe, relax, and stay calm can make a difference inside the octagon, and adding extreme measures to his meditation, like fasting and isolation, trains his focus for the times when his body is pushed to the extreme. Jiri isn't the only member of the MMA community who supports sensory deprivation as a mental fortitude exercise. Former fighter and commentator Joe Rogan loves the experience so much that he had a tank installed in his house and spends an hour in sensory deprivation now and then. It's the same concept, removing all distractions to allow for introspection, but Jiri goes hungry for 3 days in the dark, not an hour. Next up, this isn't Jiri's only outlandish training regimen. The Czech warrior has made a career out of his unorthodox approach to MMA, often taking his training into his own hands. For instance, before his title match against Glover Teixeira at UFC 275, Jiri revealed that punching a tree in his backyard had been one of his long-time exercises. His backyard may be the only place he can do it too, because we doubt any trainer would take the risk even once, let alone 500 times a day like Jiri. He believes it allowed him to be like a rock, teaching him to push through his opponents and bend them to his will. Nature doesn't just offer Jiri cool metaphors though. The samurai loves taking long runs in nature, swimming in fresh bodies of water, and training from the comfort of his backyard, with basic equipment like weights, kettlebells, a rope, and other necessities. What's unique to Jiri, and symbolic of his nickname, is his consistent training with a samurai sword. He's obsessed with the samurai lifestyle and training regimen, and believes their traditions to be a premium way of realizing the warrior within you, despite the hierarchical concept having been ended officially. Now for whether or not his methods work. Considering his career trajectory, we're inclined to say that they do. Prochazka has never lost in the UFC, earning his title in his first few fights, and then defeating Glover Teixeira in a contender for the fight of the year. The man has only ever lost thrice in his career. It's been a while since, but how do these exercises win Jiri matches? On their own, they probably can't. It's no secret that the champion is a superbly talented fighter, and in the prime of his life, but the UFC is filled with young and talented fighters. Jiri believes his training regimen makes him unorthodox in the ring, a quality that's brought a lot of success in the past. Moreover, it could be the key component in the explosiveness in his style that's got him 24 knockouts in 27 victories in his pro career. More than physical skills, his training might equip him with the mental strength one builds through activities like punching trees, fasting, and sensory deprivation. His willingness to put himself in painful situations repeatedly builds the confidence one needs to pull himself out of the situation. That's a formidable skill to have. One Jiri demonstrated beautifully when he won the title via surprise submission against one of the UFC's best jiu-jitsu black belts. Lastly, who will Jiri be facing next? Not only is Jiri's training unorthodox, but his choice of the first title defense is also rather controversial among UFC fans. The Czech samurai won the belt against 42-year-old Glover Teixeira in a fight many were expecting to be much easier for Jiri. He thought so too and considered it to be one of his worst performances in professional fighting. Now he wants to fight Glover again. The nature of Glover's career and age may have made for a heartwarming story, but fans knew his reign may be cut short by retirement before defeat. Jiri, however, believes earning a second and more impressive finish over Teixeira is necessary to cement his championship status. If Jiri can get through Glover again, he is most likely to be matched up against former champion Jan Blachowicz. That was the fight fans both wanted and expected before Jiri's surprise announcement, but we guess we'll just have to wait a bit longer. Moving on, is Jiri Prochazka a samurai? Starting off, the origins of the Czech samurai. People didn't just start calling Jiri a samurai because of his hair and training quirks. He got the nickname in Japan because of how dangerous he was in a fight. The Czech star destroyed local competitions before being signed by Rizin and reaching the final of the Rizin World Championship Grand Prix in 2015. Jiri has gone around the world learning new techniques, adapting his style, and deepening his arsenal. This undoubtedly led him to the way of the samurai in Japan, leading to a 10-fight win streak at Rizin, which won him the light heavyweight championship and averaged his loss to Muhammad Lawal. Jiri's tear through Asia and Europe won the attention of President Dana White by beating 3 former UFC stars. Soon, the UFC wanted all the smoke with the Czech samurai and set him up with increasingly difficult competitions, all of which crumbled in front of the Czech samurai. Let's talk about the Bushido Code of Honor and sword training. The Bushido is central to the training of young samurai, representing the 7 virtues that are instrumental in honor of a samurai: justice, benevolence, respect, sincerity, honor, loyalty or duty, and courage. For Jiri, the Bushido Code is like the Bible for him. He believes strengthening one's mind and character is just as instrumental as training the body. Moreover, his unorthodox striking comes from the Bushido Code's broad teachings, as opposed to repetitive striking drills. Other than the Bushido Code, which doesn't have a physical training regimen, Jiri practices traditional samurai sword fighting forms, something he showed in a recent video he made to chronicle his backyard sessions. While it may seem unorthodox, learning how to perfectly use an object like a sword is great for hand-eye coordination, timing, and muscle control. Finally, what does it mean to be a samurai today? Considering the system was abolished in the 1880s, being a samurai doesn't mean what you might think it does. Rather than donning armor and policing the people through brute force, Jiri focuses more on the mental training samurai would put themselves through to acquire the intellect and judgment needed by someone of their station. Moreover, Prochazka finds the discipline of the samurai to be an intensely beneficial experience for someone so deeply involved in the business of violence. Often we see Jiri knock someone out viciously, only to be checking up on them as soon as the referee calls the fight to a close. This, we feel, is a sign that Jiri doesn't approach the way of the samurai to be violent for the sake of it, or to abuse his powers, but to perfect his technique. Much of the fighter's outlook, the way he sits and carries himself, parts of his diet, and his training have been influenced by the way of the samurai so heavily that the Japanese media dubbed him Czech samurai themselves. Quite the honor considering how revered the samurai were in Japan. That's a wrap for this video. Do you think Jiri can defend the belt against contenders like Glover and Jan? Will his unorthodox training give him an advantage or be his downfall? Let us know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, give us a like and subscribe for more quality content.